All right, we want to welcome everybody tonight to Pechakucha, Knoxville. I think it's volume 46. Is that right? Whoa, 46. Here we are. So this Pechakucha started in Tokyo, Japan by a group of architects who basically created a storytelling style that would keep it interesting in a short amount of time. So 20 images, 20 seconds per image to tell your story. We've been doing this in Knoxville since January 2011, but globally it's been happening for 20 years. And so this is the start of 20 years of 20 by 20. So thank you all for coming out tonight. So what you're going to see tonight is there will be 9 presenters. We'll have 3 presenters. We'll have an intermission. We'll have 3 presenters, a second intermission, and then we'll have 3 more presenters. And so it's a wonderful opportunity for these people to tell their stories. We have some thank yous tonight. First, we want to thank our presenters. Pechakucha Knoxville is only as good as our presenters are. So presenters, thank you very much for braving to tell your stories. So we also want to thank the Mill and Mine. The Mill and Mine has been very generous to us to have this community spot here. And they wonderfully provide us with this space. They don't charge us rent for it. All they do is charge us for a cleaning fee. And so it's very generous of the Mill and Mine. So thank you very much. I want to thank Eli Johnson, who's taking photographs for us tonight so we can put them later on all the social medias. So Eli with Lock and Key, thank you very much. I'm sorry, not Lock and Key. I said it wrong. Eli Photographer Extraordinaire is taking these pictures for us. Paul Seiler created our poster, which you can see right there for volume 46. Paul Seiler is with the Thought Bureau, and he created a wonderful poster. It's kind of a throwback on these images. And then finally, I want to thank our curators. There are 9 of us who helped produce the event, and so thank you to all our curators for putting this together. You know who you are. Grateful for you. There's an opportunity to contribute, so donation only. It's how we pay for the cleaning fee, how we pay for posters, and a couple other small fees that we have. So there's an opportunity if you want to donate either at the door in cash or with that QR code, which has become one of the more relevant things in our society. So through Venmo. And then finally, next you're going to see our order of presenters tonight. So those are our 9 presenters with intermissions. Ask if you, and I still hear some of y'all talking in the back, love conversations. Please go outside if you want to continue a conversation. Ask you to silence your phones. And thank you all for coming. And let's get started.
Hello. How y'all doing? I like how there was no hype music. You all got quiet as soon as I walked up. Thank you so much. So my name is Michael Gallion. Thank you all for coming out. Shall we get started? It feels like I'm about to give you a sermon, and I don't love that. All right, let's go. So my name is Michael Gallion, but you can refer to me as the verified Instagram new government name, the Dancing Blue Shirt Guy. As you may or may not know, I am the fake security guard that performed with the Tennessee dance team in October and since received some international attention and essentially went viral. This photo right here captured the hip thrust heard around the world, or at least around Neyland Stadium. The story surrounding this event has been told several times from local channels to global websites, but tonight I want to share with you the overwhelmingly emotional response of my performances and how I've been feeling so good and so blue. I was that kid growing up, always hamming it up, always performing. I was introduced to dance and cheer by my older sister and finally got into dance class in 2nd grade. What a foreshadowing costume in the middle. This was essentially my only dance class, and I became a cheerleader in middle school, which was so easy in small town Delaware, the school the size of this room. I chose UT for the same reason every dude does, cheerleading. I strived to wear that orange uniform on the sidelines, and then tryouts came along, and then the first time I ever felt fear, rejection, intimidation. It was time for me to sideline my sideline dreams. And then I became a showstopper. Me, Inside Edition, the show that I watched as a kid, was talking about me, along with the Today Show and ESPN, and they were saying good things and great things, and I wasn't being called a queer leader. I wasn't being laughed at. I was being loved and celebrated. I was stopped on the streets, and for once, I wasn't ashamed to say, yes, I'm the boy dancing on the sidelines. A week later, I wanted to record... I only have 7 minutes. I wanted to record a feel-good video on campus, and I asked some dance students to join me to dance to a Never Gonna Not Dance Again. And I put on my blue shirt, my very stretchy khakis, and I anxiously awaited. And those dudes said, "Are you the blue guy?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then they wanted to show me a dance routine. Now people wanted selfies with me and to tell me how happy they were to watch my video. And not by the people I thought. I expected dance students and cheer moms. But then I was being hugged by someone that looked like my high school demons. And it made me very happy that I was making people happy in a way that I didn't know. People started dressing up like me, as you see. My bowling buddy, Matt, Lila, and Nick. But my favorite would be my nephew on the right, who did me for show and tell. And he said everybody in the class wanted to be me, but he's also homeschooled. So that's... interesting. Great. And then all of a sudden became a local celebrity, and Pretentious hired me, and they named a beer after me, and we all saw that very look-alike on MOB's window. Those are my arms, definitely. But after 20 years of working in the mall selling t-shirts, all of a sudden I was a t-shirt. And within a month, we were sold out, and they were being shipped everywhere. People wanted my face on their chest again. And I wanted the shirt to be inspirational and have a double meaning. Never sideline your dreams. Go for it, and go for it now. Cut to the new year, and I'm visiting a studio that I worked at years ago, and students are giggling and whispering, and the parent says, "I'm nervous. They're nervous to meet you." And I turn around, and this boy in blue was holding a piece of paper and asked for my autograph, my very first autograph. And this one felt very important. To have a boy dancer see another male dancer on TV getting positive attention in Tennessee, it felt special. And then that was a mistake, because 40 minutes later, I'm still signing autographs. But I would have been them if I was them. I was honored that these kids that actually see professional dancers wanted my name on a piece of paper. And one of them wanted an interview, whatever. So we knew the blue shirt had to make a return. We also knew we had to elevate the experience. If we didn't, they would see it coming. After hearing the response of the first video, I had to make a plan. Let's call for backup. The marketing team was down. They let me sort of create the storyline of finding more security guards, and I knew just who to call. Someone recently told me the point of being a trailblazer isn't to make a new path for yourself, it's to make the path easier for the person behind you. I now have this platform to promote dance, and I knew I wanted someone just like me to open the door for me when I was this age. I didn't have a second thought in my mind of what I had to do. I called on some peers, some former students, some fellow instructors, some UT alum to join me. The stage had to be shared that night. I wanted these gentlemen to have the chance to see the reaction, to hear the crowd, and to feel the love and acceptance that some of us might be their first time while dancing. The music started, the dance team yanked me on stage and to join them, and the crowd went wild. I stopped the music, and I took over the court. Enter the Blue Crew. You could tell the crowd was amped for what's about to come, and then all of a sudden the energy took over our bodies, and we were on autopilot with a direct flight to Cloud 9. We hit that final pose, and I couldn't help but get emotional, shaking in my sensible khakis. They loved us. Coming off that court was nothing less than magical. The kids were pumped, the adults were hyped, and I was blue. We just had 14 boys dancing in the middle of a Tennessee basketball game. We were getting high fives and not swirlies. People were standing up and not putting us down. What I set out to do, especially for these young dancers, is to show the power of joy, the language of dance, and the fact that we all have this gift to share. Now more than ever, I'm not embarrassed to have this picture up here. 10 years ago, I was self-hating, pessimistic product of the environment I created around me. But now I'm finally proud to be me. Not because I'm famous, because I'm me. So for the thank yous, thanks. Thank you, Kelly Tafazzoli and the UT dance team for giving me a chance of a lifetime. Thank you to my friends and family who have supported my delusion of wanting to be a celebrity. Thank you all to all the bullies that forced me out of Delaware for giving me this quick wit and a thick skin and showing me No matter how hateful the words are from your lips, they will never have the power of these hips. I should end it there, but I won't. I need to apologize to one person, the 18-year-old cheerleader from Delaware. I'm sorry I didn't believe in you. I'm sorry I stopped your dreams. I was scared that you would get hurt and that you weren't good enough. I made you sideline your dreams because of your fear, but I'm learning to be the best version of you that I can be. The people love you. They always have, and now I'm proud to be blue. Thank you.
Have you ever felt called to do something? That's the answer I'm most likely to give when asked why I moved to Knoxville sight unseen 5 years ago. If you spent any time with me, you will know 3 things. I'm from Wisconsin. I'm passionate about non-alcoholic craft beer. And I firmly believe that everything happens exactly when and how it's supposed to. I believe pennies are my sign from the universe that I'm on the right path. I also believe in the golden thread theory. Their past and future can be traced along one single golden thread. And for me, that golden thread is beer. I grew up in the drunkest state in America. No matter the occasion, beer was involved. Didn't matter if it was a wedding, a funeral, a birthday, or a baptism. If people were congregating, there was bound to be beer. The frigid temperatures much of the year make bars the primary spots for socializing. Drinking is so deeply ingrained in our culture that we have shirts that boast "Drink Wisconsinably." At the end of the day, I believe beer was a means to an end for building connection, community, and belonging. But for me, the biggest appeal came from a different place. Beer is so cool. From the science and sociology to its rich history, beer is endlessly fascinating. So while walking away from a college education to beg my way into my hometown brewery might seem unorthodox to some, for me, it was my calling. So with no experience, just passion and persistence, I begged my way into hometown brewery and they gave me a chance. For months, I worked unpaid and traded cases of beer for on-site education. The next 5 years were spent in nearly every aspect of beer, from its creation and packaging to sales and marketing. You could even catch me nearly every weekend as a brewery tour guide. Some things never change. In doing, I was able to witness firsthand the community-building powers of beer. But sometimes life redirects you and humbles you deeply. After a series of heartbreaks, I took a step back. I began to reevaluate my relationship with alcohol and my place in the industry. I also didn't know if I was doing as much good for the world as I was capable of. So I changed course. I spent 1.5 years being a caregiver to an amazing woman with Alzheimer's disease. I also returned to school. It took a lot of soul mending and a wide left turn, but ultimately my golden thread led me back to beer. A marketing professor gave me one of the greatest challenges of my lifetime. In 6 weeks, we were to create a marketing plan for a new business that also solved an issue. A brewery was a natural choice, and the issue I wanted to solve was the abysmal selection of non-alcoholic offerings. Until recently, if you wanted NA beer, the offerings were slim to none. Worse yet, they tasted like punishment. The stigma around drinking NAs is tied to those who have maybe partied too hard, but the reasons for not wanting to drink alcohol are many. Little did I know this project would change the course of my life. I spent weeks diving headlong into the study of NA beer. Years later, this is still the case. By the end of the semester, with my passion reignited, I had the courage to pursue my next adventure, finally moving to Knoxville. That was 5 years ago. Since then, I've immersed myself deeply in our craft beer community. From running Knox Brew Tours to producing and co-hosting Knox Brew Stories, a local beer podcast with my friend and mentor, Zach Roskop, I am able to see the good that craft beer can do by bringing people together. I found a deeper sense of purpose, belonging, and the most incredible sense of community I've ever known. But my greatest dream remains, to establish a non-alcoholic craft brewery here. Incidentally, in these same 5 years, non-alcoholic beer has made a meteoric rise in the industry. The year before that marketing course, Athletic Brewing Company was founded. Just last year, they were named the number 26 fastest growing business in the nation, making entirely non-alcoholic products. The numbers are explosive, and NA beer has grown 300% in recent years. Athletic has grown 500% year over year, attracting investors like Keurig Dr. Pepper and endorsements from the likes of Lance Armstrong and J.J. Watt. Breweries Untitled Art, Wellbeing Brewdog, and others have found success in offering diverse styles and enticing marketing campaigns. And it's not just craft. Entities like Budweiser to Heineken are projecting that 20% of their annual income will come from the NA sector by 2025. And it isn't uniquely American. From Europe to Australia, NA beer has seen explosive growth with no signs of slowing. The sober curious movement is growing rapidly, and a perfect storm is brewing. Older generations are discouraged from mixing alcohol with medicine. Gen Z and Y are embracing more sober lifestyles. 22% of millennials, the largest demographic of craft brewery drinkers, has slowed consumption. Interestingly, 80% of NA drinkers still drink alcohol. The trend is pointing to more health conscious, but the need for connection and community remains. So why isn't everyone diving in? For starters, the challenges are many. For years, the beer industry has mostly been an open secret. Ingredient and even recipe sharing are one of the coolest reasons why beer is one of the coolest fraternities you can be a part of. But the NA industry is the Wild West. Everything's proprietary, technology's in its infancy, and nobody's talking. Believe me, I've been asking. But if you want something bad enough, you'll do whatever it takes to make it happen. I'm enrolled in courses at the Brewing and Distilling Center. I'm networking tirelessly with industry professionals. My free time outside of 4 jobs is pursuing this dream, and I'm standing before you sharing it today. So why Knoxville? This is where I extend my golden thread to you. It may seem hard to believe, but I had no concept of Knoxville's beer scene before I moved here. In 5 years, the number of breweries have doubled. Kombucha, an NA alternative, has shown promise with continued growth of local companies Tempo and Frog Juice. The latter's entirely NA space prove that markets exist here, but we're still underserved. My incredible partner, Mitch, is one of my greatest inspirations. Their sober lifestyle but interest in NA has led me to seek spaces that we can both enjoy together. Breweries like Crafty Bastard and Alliance Brewing offer entire coolers full of NA options, but aside from the aforementioned, none are produced locally. We can do better. The only NAs that are brewed in Tennessee are produced and distributed from Southern Grist across the state in Nashville. The next closest, Brightside, is in Atlanta. If I know anything about Knoxville, it's its passion for supporting local makers. It's a city full of dreamers and doers with a giant penny in the sky. I believe in Knoxville's beer community. I've witnessed it build and strengthen communities firsthand. Communities are at their strongest when everyone is included, and that includes craft beer. I humbly ask you in supporting my dream of bringing this to Knoxville. Our time has come, the place is here. Stay tuned. I'll be ready soon to answer the call. Cheers, and thank you.
Okay, let's do a vibe check real quick so you know what Slow No Running Club is all about. Here are 2 facts posited by Brendan Leonard in his book, I Hate Running, and You Can Too, and a graphic from the same book. Fact number 1, it is okay to take breaks while running. Sometimes breaks last a few seconds, and sometimes they last a few years. Fact number 2, there are no rules of what constitutes running or minimum required speed, but in the sport of race walking, 1 foot is required to be in contact with the ground at all times, or the runner is considered to be running. So, I am Scott Cramen. I started the Slow No Running Club in May of 2019 with my buddy David Whedon. I am a realtor with the Fox and Fogarty team at Realty Executives, former Democratic candidate for Knox County Register of Deeds, and David is a regional director with Benchmark Physical Therapy. We started the club with the goal of being a novice-oriented running club. We meet every Tuesday night at 6:30 p.m., rain or shine, seriously, at Suttree Landing Park, and then we get beers at Trailhead afterwards. And let's go a bit deeper on myself and why we started the Slow No Running Club. Myself and David wanted to create a weekly running group run that caters to new runners and injured runners. I was a big runner in my early 20s when I was in the Army Reserve. I had some ongoing IT band issues that just would not resolve and had pretty much given up on running. And by my late 20s, I was on one of those longer breaks. And in 2019, there we go. In 2019, we were talking about the Couch to 5K app and method, which, if you're not familiar, is based on a run-walk intervals, and thought, let's do that. And thus, the club was born. Our first meeting was in May of 2019. And since May of 2019, we have grown quite a bit. In the early days, we encouraged everyone to download the Couch to 5K app. We would go to Suttree Landing Park and do our run walk laps together. We noticed how much everyone was progressing, including myself, so we added the traditional out and back run. And near the beginning of fall 2019, pretty soon the majority of the group wanted the traditional out and back run rather than the couch to 5K run walk intervals. I internalized this run walk hybrid. I checked some pride at the door, and I began running further and further because I realized walking is part of running. In 2020, I ran my first half marathon, my first full marathon. In 2021, I ran a 50K ultra marathon. And then in September, I ran the Pikes Peak Marathon. Walking really is running. The group has grown and changed too. Before the pandemic, we expanded to a second weekly run at Hops and Hollers, RIP. We brought on our friend and Gen 1 Run Club member, Benchmark multi-site director Elaine Irvin, to help with the planning. But we had to shrink back because of the COVID-19 pandemic and adjust just like everyone else. We used to meet at a bar, but in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, that was not an option. We decided to keep meeting, but do it at Suttree Landing Park so we could social distance and keep our community together. Oh, there's waffles. And since then, we always meet at the pavilion at Suttree Landing Park. So, what does a normal Tuesday look like? Once again, we're a novice-oriented run club. So like I said above, walking is always encouraged. And how do we do this? We structure the night in a way that is appealing to new runners, those getting back into running, and those looking for a few more miles every week, and maybe some new friends. The two routes we run are a maximum of 3.2 miles. They are an out and back route, which promotes any runner to do the entire route, or turn around at any point to run 1 mile, 2 miles, or whatever you need. One route takes us on Sevier Ave down Island Home Boulevard. We turn around at the School of the Deaf and come back. The other route takes us the other way on Sevier Ave, across the Gay Street Bridge, through downtown and back across the Henley Street Bridge. And if you want to feel like a total badass, run across 2 bridges on 1 run, even if it's only 3 miles. It's really cool. And then we go to Trailhead and drink beers and hang out. We usually have a minimum number of about 12 to 15 runners show up, and as many as 50 on a nice spring or fall day, or, when it's 70 degrees in February. So why do we do this? Why do I do this? Fitness and friends. I just talked about the fitness a little bit. So let's talk about friendship. Slow No Running Club really has become a community of friends and runners. I started the group to meet new people, encourage myself and others to lace up their shoes. And being honest, the growth of the group has been the most shocking part to me. I started this selfishly to get myself back into shape and running again. I had no idea how the group would affect myself and those who make it their own. And I really didn't think I'd be doing this 4 years later. Yeah. So the growth of the group has been so fun because we cater to novice runners. Folks have phased out. They go on run with faster groups. They expand training schedules, or they meet their goals and move on. And that's totally fine. It's encouraged. If everyone who has ever participated all come on one night, we'd likely have 300 to 500 runners. And because folks graduate from the group, it also means every season a new core group kind of establishes to really make it their own. We still have some Gen 1 runners, we still have some Gen 2 runners, and I don't know, we're on like Gen 5 or some shit now. I lost count. So, I am proud of our humble running club, the people who come, and everyone we've met along the way. So come join us on a Tuesday night.
All right, we're going to try to start this this next section of Pechakucha. So if you'll find a seat, that would be great. So, how great is this town hall meeting tonight? Pretty good. Oh, I'll stall for her. All right, so we are in the second section of Pechakucha Volume 46. I want to thank everybody else for coming out tonight. All right, here we go. 3 more presentations. Thank you very much.
So this talk is called Art is Why I Believe in God. It was corrupted on the program, but that's not as bad as the autocorrect on my phone that said Art is Why I Believe I'm God. So it's going to work out fine, I think. I'm ready. Yeah. As a rabbi, the hardest question I think I was ever asked came some years back. Where does your theology come from? I hadn't thought about it. I was pretty flustered and I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. Art? Oh, my interview asked, do you mean Art Green, the modern mystic rabbi? And I said, that's him. I said, no, art. Like, like art. I'm just convinced that the human impulse to create is evidence of some profound spirit that moves within, through, and beyond each of us. The Talmud, the Jewish collection of writings from the 3rd and 4th centuries, says, the human soul is a tiny lamp kindled from the divine torch. It's the vital spark of the heavenly flame. Some call that light God, or a higher power, or just the force. Record producer Rick Rubin calls it our creative source. Living a life of purpose and joy and significance is really hard. Courageous creativity is something that gets us through it. When I faced my own dark night of the soul about 2 decades ago, I remembered something that Elvis had written on hotel stationery. Help me make it through the night. Which then made me think of a verse from Psalms. I'm weary with groaning. Every night I drench my bed, my tears soak my couch. And so somehow, knowing that seekers and artists wrestled with those same doubts decades or millennia before me, got me through that difficult night. Art and faith come together to save lives. My own, a teen pop star in recovery, a canceled Twitch streamer, and more whom I've watched grow from desperation to grace, gratitude, giving and forgiving, becoming soulmates in the lonely work of creating. We teach each other creative courage. I'm Alon Ferenczi, the rabbi who stepped down from my pulpit at Heskamuna Synagogue after more than 12 years in order to counsel artists full-time, helping each dive deeper into the why of their practice and unearth the spiritual roots of the art. To date, the bulk of my work is one-on-one counseling, helping each artist, whether game designer, musician, poet, screenwriter, or sculptor, find their truest essential voice. That is, put more of yourself in your art. For now, I'm confident that art has the prophetic power to change the world. I envision communing and collaborating, a community in ever-expanding circles that brings artists together in ways that support each other and allow them to be prophets. What have I learned in the past year or so of counseling artists directly? First, it's confirmed my faith that art is indeed a spiritual process. The best art is deeply personal and comes from the soul. Everyone I work with has a different reason for making art, but many clients echo some version of, it wasn't there and I needed it to be. As Toni Morrison said, if there's a book you want to read but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. Second, in order to thrive, each artist needs to find her or his own process, whether that means being alone, reading, spending time in nature, playfully procrastinating, or just scribbling. Everyone's process is different. To cite a client, we write into a kind of nothingness, and so everyone needs a technique to defy the empty page. On the other hand, we all have internal blocks, saboteurs like immaturity, impatience, or addiction that get in our way. Woody Allen's manager said of the great and troubled comedian Lenny Bruce, he sinned against his talent through drugs and other abuses. Our work in this lifetime is to remove those impediments, such that just as a singer might clear her sinuses and diaphragm before singing, each authentic voice vibrates with the strongest resonance. To make art requires attunement and sensitivity. We move fearfully through the valley of shadow toward a valley of vision, allowing ourselves to dance over the edge of chaos, trembling from the vulnerability that requires. So we make sanctuaries, studios and spiritual supports that form havens of respect and compassion, within which we can take risk to show our tender and authentic sides, because we are all, each of us, broken, and art is at its best a work of repair and healing. Last, I've learned that art making has three distinct and complete elements: the artist, the observer, an audience, and the art itself, an embodied, personifiable thing impatiently waiting to be born. In Spanish, the words for giving birth are darme a luz, to give light unto a person. For me, God is what I call the creative source that reveals that light, and I am just a delivery room chaplain, a doula for creative artists, helping them bear the endless yearning and longings in an all too short life. To quote Rick Rubin again, not all projects take time, but they do take a lifetime. Yes, in a finite lifespan, with a limited number of true works, there's no time like the present to begin. Howard Thurman says, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and do it. What the world needs is people who have come alive. Thank you.
No. There we go. Hello. Okay, I'm ready. Hi, my name is Jordan Smith, and today I'm here to talk to you about pie. I'm the owner of a brand new micro bakery called Small Comforts Kitchen here in Knoxville. I launched in November, and everything that I make is gluten-free. This project started as a New Year's resolution, love for the gluten-free, yay, as a New Year's resolution. In January of 2022, I set myself a challenge to bake 52 pies in a year. The twist is that I have celiac disease, and pie is famously hard to make gluten-free. I started this project as a way to cope with stress during my final semester of graduate school, because pie forces you to focus, to get out of your brain and into your body. You have to pay attention or disaster will strike. I honestly didn't expect to reach the goal of 52 pies, but I kept at it, and by the summer it was clear that not only had I found a new passion, but that I was making something that folks in Knoxville are really interested in. I documented my project on Instagram under the handle Small Comforts Kitchen, posting simple photos of each pie or tart or galette or hand pie. My first event was Thanksgiving. Trial by fire for a pie maker. I spent all of November elbow deep in sugar, butter, and gluten-free flour, baking the pies 4 at a time in 2 regular ovens like you probably have in your homes. With the help of my very patient boyfriend, we were able to finish all 32 pies on time, all while I was still working a full-time job, and I still am. Ooh. By the end of 2022, my total for the year was not 52 pies, but more than 80. Since Thanksgiving, I've hosted 3 sales and baked somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 hand pies and other things. These pop-ups represent steps towards eventually opening an entirely gluten-free bakery or cafe here in Knoxville, but that's a while from now. So we're up to date on my business now, so what do I have to talk about tonight? I don't have any particular wisdom to offer about entrepreneurship since I'm so early in my journey, so I'm going to go back to 2012 to tell the story of how I became a business owner. And that starts while I was an undergraduate student at the University of Texas, which has the better orange, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. After a study abroad trip to Italy, I was diagnosed with celiac disease. Food had always been so important to me, and I had a fledgling food blog at the time to show it. Gone were the days of easily feeding myself and trying new restaurants without fear. I stopped updating the blog and stopped caring about food until 2017, when I moved in with my now ex, and having someone to cook for and with suddenly made things fun and exciting again. But another diagnosis hit, and this time it was for persistent depressive disorder. I was so down that I could not get out of bed until I started making myself beautiful breakfast and documenting them on Instagram under the name Small Comforts Kitchen, because food had been a small comfort to me during a difficult time. The newspaper in Austin ran this story, and I was like, I am all set to become a food journalist. And then more things happened, which was that in December of 2018, December 24th, I was admitted to the psychiatric unit at Blount Memorial in Maryville, Tennessee. I am from Texas, as you can tell from how I just pronounced those places. But my family moved to Knoxville in 2011, so I was visiting them for Christmas, and I look normal and happy in this picture, which was a few weeks before what happened, but I was not. In the days, weeks, and months leading up to Christmas Eve, my behavior had grown increasingly strange. When I arrived in Tennessee, it was not clear the last time I had slept or eaten, and I was hallucinating wildly. I had lost so much weight so quickly that my parents barely recognized me as I left the terminal in a wheelchair, too weak and out of it to walk. While in the hospital, I was diagnosed with bipolar 1 with severe psychosis at the age of 28. My ex, afraid of what this meant for our future, dumped me and kept that adorable dog, and I lost several important friendships as well. So I moved to Tennessee and moved in with my parents because there was no other choice. I could not take care of myself. Even with intensive therapy and medication, it took 9 months for me to untangle what had happened, from understanding my mania and the extent of the visual and auditory hallucinations I'd experienced to crawling out of the incapacitating depression that followed. I could not hold a job for that time period, and I was certain that nothing could ever get better. While I was hospitalized, a sweet social worker told me to lower my ambitions for my life and to build a less complicated one with minimal stressors instead. This was the best way to reduce my risk for future dangerous episodes. But what I wish I'd been told instead was that with the right tools and the right community support, you can come back from the brink and you can still thrive without letting go of your dreams. You can lose jobs, relationships, and weather a pandemic even if you have a mood disorder. You can still be loved and you still can love. Unfortunately, there's still stigma, especially with psychosis, and most of the time when I share my story, I'm met with overwhelming support, but not always, and in one case, I am fairly certain that my disclosure caused a job loss. And now, here I am, telling you that I'm starting a new business, and I'm hoping in some way that you'll want to support me, so it feels risky to admit that I have a history of hallucinating and not knowing fiction from reality, so why would you bet on me? I worry about all of that, but if today I were still in the place I was during 2019, it would have been incredibly valuable to hear this story told by someone who had recovered from disaster. With mental health crises, I think sometimes we focus more on the stories of tragedy than the ones of recovery, the stories that do end happily. I am better now because of medications and therapy and family support, but also because of the community I found here in Knoxville, and I found the community I now have largely because of pie. Slice of pie and you build community. It's inherently shareable. It's the 4th of July and Thanksgiving and countless family memories. It's passed around a common table. It is not always polished, and it's totally okay for it to be messy and humble while still totally badass and creative and filling. Kind of sounds like people, right? So this is my story of the birth of my business and also the story of my mental health journey. The two are inextricably intertwined, and I'd rather be authentic about my past rather than conceal it. I will not glamorize bipolar disorder or credit it with where I am now or say that everything happens for a reason, because sometimes it doesn't. But I will say this, I am massively happier now than I was before my psychotic episode, because it brought me here to Knoxville, and I can confidently say that had I remained in Austin, I would have not found the community support I needed to follow my baking dreams. Food has always shown me the way back to myself, and now it's helped me find my home. If there's anyone in the audience who needs to hear it tonight, I want you to hear me say that you can come back from the darkness and build a life that is even better than the one you had before. Just take it one day. Take it one day, even one pie at a time.
Thanks. Word of wisdom, don't ever tell a person with mental health issues or a cancer patient that everything happens for a reason. I will personally throat punch you. Let's go. My name is Michael Holtz. I'm an 11-year rectal cancer survivor and a fierce advocate for the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, Fight Colorectal Cancer, and other groups. I'm not supposed to be here because my disease should have killed me, if that's not obvious. I work here at Oak Ridge Associated Universities. We're a contractor to the U.S. Department of Energy and other federal agencies, about 27 of them in total. We're based in the secret city. Most of our work isn't secret, but we have some history that not a lot of people know about. In the 1950s, we opened this place, the Oak Ridge, the ORIN's Medical Division Cancer Hospital. It was one of 3 hospitals set up to explore the uses of radiation for the treatment of cancer. The others were in Chicago and in New York. The guy standing is Dr. Marshall Brucer. He was the first director of the cancer hospital, and he was one of the pioneers in the fields of nuclear medicine, radiation therapy, oncology, and more. And I'll talk more about his contribution specifically in a moment. In the 24 years during which the cancer hospital operated, 3,500 people were treated. All were diagnosed with cancer before coming to Oak Ridge. All of them were considered terminal. But check out the mid-century modern decor. The very first patient was a woman with extensive thyroid cancer. She was admitted in May 1950. As I said, she, like all of the other patients, was considered terminal. The ORIN's Medical Hospital, Cancer Hospital, was kind of people's last hope. So, as I mentioned, Dr. Brucer and his team made significant contributions to the field of nuclear medicine. They built on the foundation that we are aware of and that medical professionals use today, and here are some of the examples of the work that they've done. So in 1955, the medical team developed the first mock radiation iodine source, or radioactive iodine source, I should say. So radioactive iodine has a long history of detecting thyroid cancers, but it has a very short half-life, so it doesn't exist very long. You have to use it very quickly. Dr. Brucer and his team also developed, this is Dr. Brucer's harem. They developed thyroid models, basically, that were sent across the country to help calibrate thyroid cancer detecting machines. ORIN's researchers also developed a linear scanner in the late 1950s. This scanner was used to determine how radioisotopes behaved in the human body and how it affected tissue. And this depended on whether people were using diagnostic or therapeutic doses of radiation. But they were kind of trying all of this out for the first time. In the late 1960s, gallium-67 was developed as a scanning agent for soft tissue tumors. Then, in the early 80s, staff determined gallium-67 could find post-op infections, so very important, and it's an agent that's still used today. In the late 70s and early 80s, carbon-11 labeled amino acids were synthesized and purified for use in PET scanners. And this is a substance that was used to diagnose pancreatic disease and detected soft tissue tumors. As in nuclear medicine, ORIN's medical staff also made major contributions to the field of radiation therapy. Today's machines may look a little less creepy, and I say a little less creepy, but a lot of the principles are still the same. For example, this is a teletherapy machine using cobalt-60, which became the most widely used radioactive source used for teletherapy or radiation treatment around the world. And again, this happened in Oak Ridge. Dr. Brucer and his team followed up, and don't you love this picture? A little scary, little Ouija board looking. the development of cesium teletherapy. Dr. Brewster actually helped develop some of the first teletherapy machines that were used around the country. Others were developed at places like MD Anderson. And this scary looking thing is a whole body irradiation machine. So the entire human body would be irradiated to treat cancer, to find tumors, all of that stuff. And yeah, that kind of looks like a oven, doesn't it? So the cancer hospital closed in 1974 because the Department of Energy determined that nuclear medicine, oncology, and other fields were thriving in the world outside of the government. Imagine, if you will. This is Hymn to Life. This is a ceramic mosaic that was built, designed by Oak Ridge artist Charles Kuntz. It was on the front of the building. Today it exists inside one of the buildings on our campus, but you can still see it. It was commissioned by the staff to honor the patients that were treated at the medical hospital. And finally, while the hospital doesn't exist, you can now find this lovely historic marker on Vance Road in Oak Ridge, just up from Methodist Medical Center, at the site of where the hospital once stood. Really amazing things happened there. As a cancer survivor who was treated with radiation therapy, I know the work that my company did long before I was even born had an impact on my health, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share that with you all tonight. Thank you.
With our final section here, but I want to make two real quick statements. So one, there's a camera set up in the back. I'm not know if you've seen it, but Knoxville Community Media, which covers every city and county meeting downtown, as well as other cultural things that are happening downtown. They are recording this tonight, these presenters, and they're going to stream it on their cable television station. So it's Knoxville Community Media. If you've not heard about them, you should think about them. Amos Oaks actually presented at the last Pechakucha on it. You can look at Instagram, Knoxville Community Media. So the second thing I want to do is I want to thank our curators, and we're going to take a real quick picture up here. I want you to meet these 8 curators up here. I got to remember everybody's names. There are actually 9 of us right now who do this, and there are actually other former curators that are a part of this and are out in the crowd. But right now it's Mary Pyle, Mark Archer, Matt Jordan, Lila Honecker, Nikki Elliott, Lauren Fife, Bonnie Casamessina, Bonnie Casamessina, and Lorena Hubbard. So come on up here. We'll take a real quick picture. Eli Johnson, who are our photographer tonight, is going to grab a real quick picture before we start this third set. These folks, they do it for you. They do it for you, but they drink at a bar for 1 hour every month to prepare this event. So thank you all for doing that. Get in tight. Get in tight. Thank you all. All right, we have 3 more presentations for volume 46. Thank you very much.
Hot mic. Thanks for everybody coming out and doing this, putting it on, all that stuff. 2525 North Central tomorrow between 6 and 9. Come out and check out our open house at our new shop. I'll go ahead and get started. In this day and age, we often see people struggling to find good jobs. Often the same people are also struggling to pay for college that was sold to them as a pathway, as a better future. A future full of employment along their way to their white picket fence and their American dream. Only it appears to me to be a more modern style of indentured servitude. Educational facilities encouraging young people to assume large amounts of debt with the promise of a better life. Yet I know so many people paying off this debt that aren't even in the field of work that matches their degree. And when asked why, the range of reasons is just as diverse as the people. So what is someone to do if they want an option other than college or military service? Trade schools, if there are any in your area, are vanishing every day. My entire generation was compelled to go to college if we were to make something out of ourselves. I'm of the X generation. Back in my day, the bad boys went to the vocational schools and as a last stop before prison, I guess, and any girls that ended up pregnant were shipped off to cosmetology school because I guess that's all they'd be able to do. Obviously, the school leaders were plucking out the bad apples from the educational orchard. When my father graduated high school, college was a few $100s a year, and it could have been paid off within a few years of graduating. What has happened to cause within a few generations for it to easily cost up to $100,000 or more? Saddling young people just starting out with that kind of debt is unconscionable. College over the past few years has transformed from an institution promoting higher education to an industry pushing higher debt. If students took the economics courses, they'd figure this out on their own, and maybe by graduation they will, but by then it's going to be too late. So what are the options? Low-paying, unskilled labor? What did people do before the systematic funnel to college? Let's look at the ends of our arms. There you'll find your hands in the beginning of the industrial arts. The umbrella term industrial arts houses many crafts, but few have been around so long they're commonly referred to as the original industrial arts. So let's break that down. Original means from as early as the late Iron Age. Industrial means work and hence progress, and arts is indicative of the infinite possibilities inherent at whatever work you may be at hand. The 5 original industrial arts are in no particular order: woodworking, masonry with stonecraft and pottery, glass making, metallurgy and all smithing, and upholstery along with all other needlecraft. Now we have all of those crafts right here in Knoxville and all within a couple of miles from where you're sitting. Each can be visited by simply traveling north on Central Street from downtown, so let's take that trip. Our first stop brings us to Pretentious Glass. Owner Matthew Cummings has a master's degree in glass making and has been in the Old City for 7 years. They're a premier glass studio producing some of the most amazing hand-blown glass art around, and you can watch demonstrations while sipping out of a handmade glass filled with handcrafted beer from Pretentious Brewing right next door. Leaving Pretentious, we'll continue north on Central, left on Jackson, and bringing us to Able Trade. Owner Spencer Ratliff, with no college degree, began working in wood in 2012. He started Able Trade 3 years ago as a community-based woodworking studio. They have subscription-based memberships as well as small shop spaces available to rent, and they welcome anyone interested in expanding their journey into woodworking. Back out on Central, we head north. A left at Tyson brings us to Primo. It's a one-of-a-kind metal crafting shop that combines metal and a multitude of other material together to forge some of the most beautiful and exciting knives and kitchen accessories available anywhere. Owner John Phillips holds a master's in fine arts, and he had no formal training in metalworking when he began hammering steel into objects over 11 years ago. Taking Tyson north, we're going to make a right on Jennings, and we find our 4th stop, Muddy Mud. Since 2012, owned by Baron Hall, who has a master's in ceramics from UT, Mighty Mud occupies a beautiful location, and you can find pottery from a myriad of artists. Anything from a simple pot to an elaborate sculpture, Mighty Mud's got something for everybody. Now, if we get back onto Jennings, we're going to take Central north, and while traveling between these particular studios, you're going to pass an eclectic collection of some of the most wonderful small businesses a community could want. From breweries and bakeries to vintage clothing, barbers, hair salons, there's also tattoo shops and many places to eat along the way. Finally, after a few blocks and a few hills, we'll come to Crown Upholstery, our 5th shop. It's run by Jessica Breitenbach. She's the 5th generation in her family to run an upholstery shop. She also happens to be my wife and my boss. Neither of us have a degree. Jessica graduated from high school, and I managed to drop out twice. We've been doing upholstery furniture for 24 years, and though this is our last stop, it is not the end of the road. To many that pass through, Central is a street merely a collection of asphalt, utilities, and buildings. But the folks that live and work and shop and congregate along its diverse landscape, it's a community of artists and residents, business owners, and we all see the value that Central has carried north from downtown and the visitors that travel south towards the river that has made this city a viable location for so many years. There is a history that has evolved through stories and images that instantly remind anyone who has lived here within the few miles of Central that make up that street. We are a diverse community with endless talent, and I find it pleasing that our future is connected not only by our past, but through an actual common road that literally brings us together. Many of the studios that I have mentioned offer opportunities for the public to learn more about their specific craft, whether it be through classes, tours, open houses, or First Fridays. I encourage you to visit and support these old world craftspeople. Now, to be clear, I'm not here to disparage military service or undermine college enrollment, because both of those institutions have their place in our society, and we reap the benefits of both. But what I'd like to do is acknowledge that the path to a happy life is much wider than you might be able to see. It has many forks, bends, and twists, and it can take you to places that you've never known and even lead you back to some already familiar paths. Don't panic if you have trouble in an institutionalized educational environment. I didn't do well there either, but it's not because I wasn't smart. It was because the path wasn't wide enough for all the participants. Not all people learn the same, and the current system isn't situated to handle different thinkers. Following your dreams is something you will hear often. Not everyone will support you in this because they had theirs negotiated away in trade for 401k and 2 weeks off a year. But what I can say is that if you follow your dreams, you are true to them, and you do your best, you'll be just as successful as any paper you can get from any university. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mitchell Connell, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my relationship with film photography, with bike touring, some mentors in my life, and how I now run a nonprofit bike shop that you probably wondered is why it's so blue on the front. So really, a lot of it started with this photograph. This is a 35 millimeter print taken on the first roll I ever put through my mom's AE1 program that she took in college. And a picture of a bicycle that my mom bought in the 90s and that my twin brother Spencer and I started riding around as a way to kind of escape from the observing eye of our parents. And that bike ended up taking me pretty far. These are self-portraits that I took at the end of every major trip that I've been on in my life. In 2009, I biked down the Natchez Trace, and last year I only had 2 weeks of vacation, so I met up with some friends on the Continental Divide. You can see my cameras get nicer, but my hairline gets kind of worse. And I feel like one of the most fortunate people in the entire world, because in high school I made these incredible friends with my twin brothers Spencer and Robert Fishman and Lane Felker, and early on I kind of developed these hobbies with film photography and with bike touring and built these great relationships that have lasted for now half my life. I started when I was 15 and now I'm 30. But it really ultimately started with this guy. This is Robert Fishman, the guy who sat next to me. Ooh, I'm spilling my water. Who sat next to me in an English class. We had a very bad sophomore year English teacher. And we were very unengaged, so planned an imaginary bike tour down the Natchez Trace. Robert bike commuted to school. We were the only 3 people that were riding our bikes. But as the class went on and the instruction really didn't get any better, our trip started to really materialize and get more specific. So these are pictures from, at the time, point-and-shoot cameras of Robert, Spencer, and I. We ultimately had no idea what we were doing, but I think the one thing that I learned on this 440-something mile trip is I needed to learn how to work on my bike. I was very fortunate that a cool community bike shop around the time called Halcyon opened up. They've since moved locations, so these pictures are super nostalgic. But I was spending like every single day after school biking over to Halcyon and trying to pester the mechanics there to teach me how to work on bikes. And some of them were not very patient with me, but some were. Stephanie was definitely the best mechanic and definitely the most patient and helped me learn how to work on my drivetrain and how to adjust my brakes. And I realized on Thursdays she was biking to this nonprofit called the Oasis Center, and probably to look cool more than my good ethics, I started to tag along and volunteer there too. Which introduced me to Dan Furbish. I'm so glad he's not here, so I can say that he's like one of the most important people in my entire life. He ran this program where he would take these high school and sometimes middle school age kids, help them refurbish these bikes, and at the end we all rode the bikes that we had been working on to Sonic and got ice cream together. And I did that for years, helping out with that program, but eventually I couldn't just stay in Nashville forever. So I maybe didn't do the right thing, but came to Knoxville to go to college and sat in a popular window and drank lots of coffee at Old City Java and rode this bike that you've probably seen locked up around town a lot, and was trying to figure out what my next step was. So when Preston Flaherty put up a flyer around town that was advertising a youth workforce development program that was going to work with bikes, keep them out of landfills, and create jobs for underserved kids, I called the number on the flyer and was like, hey, I have this experience. I would love to help in any way I can. Just let me know what I can do. And I got this amazing opportunity for the next 3 years to work with really talented kids like Eugene, who had his shit way more together in high school than I ever did. He was like a star athlete and super charming. But I got to work with these kids for 3 years and kind of learn how to run a small business, how to work with customers, and then teach some of those skills to these really, really talented kids. And Preston eventually moved on, which gave me the opportunity to kind of move into a more administrative position and learn more about business and kind of work from a bigger picture. Around the same time that Matt started working at Dream Bikes. And he did a phenomenal job kind of taking over the programmatic aspects of the work that we were doing. But after 5 years, the national nonprofit Dream Bikes that we were both working for announced that they were going to close, which was devastating for me because at this point, it had been 10 years that I had been singularly focused on this one goal, and I thought probably for the second time in my life, I had everything kind of figured out. But Matt and I put our heads together and decided we wanted to continue doing similar work in the community, but we were going to do it our way. So I've been playing ping pong with this guy who had some real estate, and I noticed that this spot, it was before it had the construction signs, was all boarded up. And I twisted his arm into convincing us to try and put something together. And over the next 6 months, we put together a business model, a board of directors, and everything we needed to do to open up what's now 2 Bikes. We quickly hired Travis Jolly, one of the best mechanics in town, who was going to run our service program. Shout out to Travis. And we knew we wanted, with this small team, that we wanted to keep it really simple, that we wanted to work on these kind of core skills. But within like 12 or 16 months, like foundations started to reach out to us and like, oh, if you were going to grow your staff and grow your programming, what would you do? And our staff of 3, like in the blink of an eye, turned into a staff of 7. And we had some ideas of what type of programs we wanted to run. We wanted to work with more kids. We had this amazing opportunity and these amazing skill set of working with high schoolers, and it was such meaningful work, but we wanted to do it in a way that felt intentional. So we built a sales and e-commerce path to train kids how to work with computers, and other kids can go down the mechanic path and learn how to work with their hands. And it doesn't take a ton of imagination to see the similarities between me in 2011 and Ferris in 2023. Except he doesn't have my cool Rivendell hat. He can never get his hands on that thing. But it just feels amazing to be able to kind of give these young people the opportunities that I was afforded and that had such a huge impact on my life. So if you'd like to contribute or help to our nonprofit, you can always drop off a bike at 2 Bikes. You can go to our website and sponsor one of our kids, one of our interns. But more than anything, like we'd love for you to just come ride bikes with us. We host more than 50 community bike rides every year. And I mean, you see us riding down the street like every day, just wave and say hi. So thank you all.
All right. I got into hiking in July of 2019, and after starting to meet other people, I initially thought I would hike once or twice a month, but by September, I started getting interested in backpacking, and by October, hiking was all I really wanted to do on the weekends. My main goal at this point was to hike all the trails in the Great Smokies, so I was hiking about 50 to 60 miles on average each weekend. Easily my favorite hike during this quest was a 17.5-hour, 32-mile hike to Mount LeConte, in which a friend and I hiked in knee-to-waist steep snow all day. Temperatures were in the teens and 20s all day as we started at 6 a.m. and finished at 11:30 p.m. And at the time, this was easily the hardest hike I'd ever done, but it was also the most fun hike I'd ever done. After finishing my map of the Great Smokies in June 2020, I went with a group of friends to backpack in Colorado in August, a place where I'd never been, and we backpacked the Lost Creek Wilderness for 3 days and the Four Pass Loop and the Maroon Bells for 4 days. We saw 10 bull moose while backpacking in Colorado, and we had great weather as the skies were clear and sunny every day. We then climbed Quandary Peak, which was my first 14er. I didn't know how I would do at altitude during this trip, as the highest I had been prior to going to Colorado was Klingman's Dome. And the hike up Quandary Peak was very steep, but the views made it more than worthwhile. It was a short 2 months after this that I would end up being sidelined a few months with reconstructive ankle surgery. My first big trip post-ankle surgery was climbing Mount Rainier in Washington in late May of 2021. I had never done anything like this before, so I was excited for the challenge of climbing a glaciated mountain. Carrying 40 pounds on my back from Paradise at 5,600 feet to Camp Muir at 10,000 feet in a snowfield didn't seem nearly as bad as I thought it would. The first morning of sleeping on the mountain greeted me with one of the most beautiful sunrises I have ever seen. It was a great way to wake up on my birthday with views like this from my tent at Camp Muir at 5:30 a.m. I couldn't help but think about how incredibly blessed I was to be there. We did a skills session of walking in crampons, walking roped up, and ice axe arrest before climbing to Ingraham Flats at 11,100 feet. Starting our push for the summit at 11 p.m. on May 31st, 2021, we reached Columbia Crest at 14,411 feet at about 4:30 a.m. While we didn't have to cross any crevasses using a ladder, we did have to walk through a snow bridge, which is essentially a narrow walking path with a crevasse on each side. We had to move quickly while watching every step since the glaciers were moving. We had a team of 4 guides and 8 climbers, and we had perfect summiting weather as we were climbing under the stars and moon during the night, and at the summit we could see the lights of Seattle, Mount Adams, Mount Hood, and Mount St. Helens, and the sun rose up just over the horizon as we started over the crater rim back down the mountain. Getting back down the mountain was just as challenging as climbing the mountain. Glissading down the mountain once we got to Camp Muir and we're back in the snowfield made it a little easier, as it was nice to get off my feet as I had developed Achilles tendonitis from my ankle injury. And glissading was a lot of fun too, as you essentially just sit down and slide as far as you can before you stop. Rainier was an incredible experience, but up next was Kilimanjaro at the roof of Africa. Mark, Scotty, Lauren, and I decided to go climb the mountain in September of 2021, and we did a 7-day climb and a 6-day safari in the trip of a lifetime. At the start of day 1, we were bright-eyed and perhaps not fully knowing what we were getting ourselves into. Each day on Kilimanjaro leading up to summit day was relatively easy, except for a few altitude symptoms that each of us experienced at different times. However, summit day is easily the hardest thing I've ever done. We started for the summit at midnight, and it took us nearly 7.5 hours to hike less than 3 miles and gain about 4,000 feet in elevation with less oxygen with every step. We took a break every 0.2 of a mile for 2 minutes at a time, and after finding the nearest rock to collapse on, all I had time to do was catch my breath and drink water. There was no time or energy to spend taking pictures despite the beautiful views at sunrise. It was a real test mentally, and all I could think about was the mental toughness instilled in me by my parents and my high school basketball coach. We reached the summit at about 7:20 in the morning, and as I was first in line behind our lead guide, Florian, he turned around and gave me a hug when we reached Uhuru Peak, and the feeling I had at that point was truly indescribable. And that I got to share this experience with awesome friends and a great team of porters and guides from Baraka Trails is something I will definitely never forget. We spent a half hour at the summit and then hiked back down to Barafu Camp, which was our base camp. As we approached Barafu, we were greeted by a few of our porters as they had met us to carry our backpacks back to camp. Upon arriving at camp, the entire team of 15 porters and guides greeted us royally. I couldn't have asked for a better experience climbing the highest mountain in Africa. Moving into 2022, I wanted to focus more on backpacking, bike riding, and kayaking as my body continued to heal from ankle surgery. I've been setting out to hike more of the Appalachian Trail as well as other areas throughout the United States. Backpacking is probably my favorite outdoor activity, but bike riding and bikepacking are a very close second. A last-minute plan came together perfectly for a trip to Arizona, Utah, and Nevada in late September last year, in which a friend and I visited several national parks and state parks, with the main event being the rim-to-rim day hike at the Grand Canyon. People had told me that the Grand Canyon was breathtaking, and after walking up to the North Rim upon arrival in late September, I would have to agree, as it's simply stunning to look out over the canyon. We started the rim-to-rim hike from the South Rim at about 4:30 a.m. under an impressive display of stars and the Milky Way, and as the sun started to rise, we could look out and see the trail winding down below into the canyon. When we got down to Phantom Ranch at the bottom of the canyon at about 9 a.m., we enjoyed some of their world-famous lemonade before starting to climb up to the North Rim. The climb up to the North Rim was long and grueling, gaining 6,000 feet in elevation over about 5 miles. We had already hiked about 18 miles before starting the climb, and it was getting very hot at the bottom of the canyon, and it seemed to be straight up to get out of the canyon. After 11 hours on trail and drinking 8 liters of water, I was so happy to arrive at the North Rim. Of all the places I have been since I became interested in the outdoors, I've decided the Appalachian Mountains and the Great Smokies are hard to beat. LeConte is my absolute favorite place to go after a good snowfall. The peacefulness and stillness in the woods after a snowfall and the beauty on the mountain is certainly something to behold. This trek in 16 inches of snow in January, about a month ago, goes down as one of my very favorite hikes ever, as I felt like I had the whole mountain to myself while breaking trail all day. And the sunset I witnessed at Cliff Tops was absolutely gorgeous. And what I'm most thankful for since developing a love for the outdoors is the incredible people I've met along the way. Friends who have inspired me, helped me, and most importantly, made me laugh even on my toughest days. These hills will always be home and a very special place to me. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. Tell somebody about Pechakucha this week or this weekend, and we'll be back on May the 11th, right here at the Mill and Mine. Thank you.